Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of How to Adult with Travis Walker. Today's episode is all about volunteerism, all right? Giving your time, giving your money, giving your talent. What are you doing? What are you doing in your life to give to someone else, right? I give knowledge. That is not the only thing that I do. But with the podcast, I give knowledge, and we're going to call it volunteerism because I want to. Today, we brought on a good friend of mine from the fraternity. His name is Chris Blacker. He has served in numerous different volunteer leadership positions, and he has come on the show to share all kinds of information about volunteerism, how should we approach volunteerism, and all of the mindset things that go with volunteerism. So I'm really excited for this episode. We learned a lot of good things that you're going to want to know, especially if you value giving your time, giving your talent, giving your finances. Before we get into the show, y'all, make sure that you are liking and sharing all of the episodes of How to Adult with Travis Walker. But also, if you're interested in sponsoring an episode, please reach out. I'd love to partner with businesses that support the podcast. And with all that being said, y'all, let's get into the show and learn how to adult. Chris, you've made it to the How to Adult with Travis Walker podcast. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here.
Oh my gosh, it's an honor to have you, and it's an honor to have someone honored to be on my podcast. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to give myself a little stamp, a little golden star or something. Well, I'm really excited to be for you to be here. I'm excited to be here as well. But we're going to talk about something really important, and that's the giving of time, volunteering. And before we started recording, I was saying so many young people put it on the back burner. We know it's important. We put it on the back burner for, I'm sure, several different reasons. But you've done a great job of keeping it on the front burner. Maybe not like the turbo boil one, but the side front one, the secondary front one that everybody uses when they have to. Anyways, that's a weird analogy, but I'm really excited. But before we even dive into volunteering, I'd love to just hear a little bit from you in terms of like, what's your name? How old are you? What's your location? What do you do for work? Just so that we can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Chris Blacker. I'm located out in Lone Tree, Colorado, just south of Denver. I'm 25 years old, and right now for work, what I'm doing is I'm working as a human resource coordinator for a company called Sierra Space, who's working to basically commercialize space and create technology that would better life, both in space, but here on Earth.
Oh, like outer space. I was like thinking real estate for a moment, but that's different real estate.
Yeah, similar to, SpaceX, or we also have a project partnered with Blue Origin. But it's more about the community and less about the people kind of in charge of those companies per se. And it's like right now, one of the things we're developing is we have reusable space planes that can take off and land on a tarmac. And we're working on developing technology that we could take DNA from, like, say, a 12-year-old boy in Ohio that needs a heart transplant, fly that DNA up to space and curate it for, say, 9 weeks, and essentially grow a heart that we can then fly back and create that transplant. So, like I said, they're trying to develop industries and expand science that we can't do here on Earth because of the physics on Earth, but we could do it in space. So it's been an exciting time to kind of see that grow. And yeah.
Wow. I thought you were amazing and cool before. This is why I wanted you on the podcast, but now just on the show live, I'm learning so much and think you're even more amazing. So thank you for sharing that. Oh my gosh. I need to do a whole nother episode just talking about space.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
But we're here to talk about volunteering, and I'm really excited. Kind of when we met each other was really in a volunteering role. And so kind of just starting off your story in the volunteering realm, I'm just wondering, what is your experience with volunteering? Where does this story begin?
Yeah. So I think it began a little bit in high school. I had the opportunity to be a part of some community-based organizations, things like Rachel's Challenge, Sources of Strength, basically things focusing on mental health, and kind of supporting people going through troubled times in high school. So that was kind of a spark of joy for me. I got to see a major impact in people's lives, but it didn't really start until college, at least for me. And I think a lot of the time when you get enthralled with volunteerism, sometimes it's by accident. And at least for me, it kind of was. I didn't realize how much I'd fall in love with it or how much I'd end up doing. And I started joining, Delta Sigma Phi is a social organization out at the University of Northern Colorado. And I just had the right time into some leadership positions, and ultimately led me to kind of coordinating some volunteer work for the organization. So one of the partners that I majorly worked with was Habitat for Humanity. And kind of after the second time of trying to coordinate an opportunity for the chapter to come in, they were on campus doing a tabling event and asked me to just come by to set it up. And that conversation was just there to set up a volunteer opportunity for the chapter, but they ended up mentioning that they were trying to start a student organization on campus that ultimately would support the Greeley Weld Habitat for Humanity. And I just kind of looked at the situation I was in and realized I had this massive organization of men looking to volunteer and give back to their community. I understood what it took to kind of coordinate an organization on campus. And 2 years later, they made me one of the youngest board of directors members in Habitat for Humanity history. And it just kind of snowballed from there, doing little things like lobbying on Congressional Hill for the rights of Greek students everywhere, to, volunteering at local food pantries and dog shelters. It's just trying to become a part of something bigger than myself, I guess.
Wow. It's such an incredible story. And there's so much there. The organization that we met each other in was of course, Delta Sigma Phi. And I totally agree. We had a very unique scenario where we had access to a bunch of people that wanted to do something with their free time, and utilizing those people to do something impactful was such a great opportunity. I did the same thing with my chapter, and it's just so important that we utilize those resources when we're in those types of positions. I totally agree with you. Can you dive into a little bit of what Habitat for Humanity is? I'm not real familiar with it, and I'd love for you to kind of explain it to the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So ultimately what Habitat for Humanity is an organization with the main focus of providing sustainable housing to everyone around the world. So they're an international organization operating in almost every single country that exists. And they're predominantly here in America. Many cities, if you just go on to habitatforhumanity.com, you can find your closest local affiliate. But they kind of run on two different business aspects. So what they're most known for is building homes. But what most people don't realize is those homes are built by volunteers like you and I, but they're also built by the families that will be moving into these homes.
Wow.
So you get to work side by side, these families from all over the world that have some of the most incredible stories that, I've met families of 7 and 8 people that were living in a 1-bedroom apartment in one of the worst areas of Colorado, and to just move into a safe neighborhood with strong education, it's major for them. And the fact that they get to help build that with their hands, it creates another whole experience. But something they're less known for is their Habitat for Humanity and it's essentially just like a Goodwill or a thrift shop, but that's how Habitat for Humanity pays all of their employees and funds their entire organization. So that when you donate money to Habitat for Humanity, you are guaranteed that money is going to those families that you're donating for, which is a major thing for a lot of nonprofits. Sometimes you don't know where those donations go. Habitat for Humanity uses their Restore to essentially sell donated items, anything from couches to plates, dishes, clothes, to completely fund the organization to guarantee that all donations go to their families. And kind of the last thing that they do is provide financial literacy classes and require what they call sweat equity from the families so that they earn these homes, but ultimately Habitat for Humanity acts as a bank and holds zero interest over the homes, so that these families are taught the resources and given the resources that they need to ultimately purchase the home and own it themselves. So that's what they mean by sustainable housing, is they're teaching these people to live lifelong housing needs, whether it's grocery shopping or financing a
Wow.
home.
Wow, that is incredible and incredibly useful. A lot of people don't understand any of that. I'm going to have an episode with a mortgage broker just talking about what home loans are, and so I'm really excited that there's an organization that's doing that because we all need that. So, but moving a little bit further into the show, I want to ask, or I want to share some data and then get your response. I found this on a quick Google. This is not something that's like peer reviewed or anything, but being
All right.
honest. So volunteering in the United States has been on a downward trend for several years. Just in 2021, people reporting service hours dropped to 56%, and in 2013, that number was 65%. So I'm interested in your analysis of that data. What do you think this is attributed to? Why is there a drop in the amount of reported service hours in the United States in general?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think something that obviously probably requires little bit more time and research than we have right now. But just based on what I know and kind of seen, I think obviously our country has been going through a large transition, whether it's through the pandemic or other elements of it. And I think um, people have begun to kind of lose a little bit of hope in humanity. I think they've kind of gotten away from believing in one small act can have a massive
Mm,
change. And I think when you're involved in volunteerism, you see that. And so, like, I think it's a snowball effect that the further we get away from each other and the further we're disconnecting, the harder it is to want to go volunteer, and the further we are away from seeing how much good truly exists in the world.
wow. Wow. Where do you think that disconnection is coming from? Do you think that's just how society is changing and how we view each other, or can we could be boomers and say it's social media? I mean, what would you say that disconnection comes
Yeah,
from?
yeah. I think first of all, I don't know if the world really is changing too much. I just think our perception of the world is
Wow.
changing. Just staying involved in volunteerism, like I have continued to see that good. And being an advisor of Delta Sigma Phi, continued to see generation of people wanting to be involved in something bigger than themselves. And I think a lot of the time they just don't know
Mm,
how. And I think maybe to be a little bit of a boomer, I think a lot of our social media is filled with that negative, and it's filled with the bads of the world, and it's not always filled with those random acts of kindness or those missions of how we can just do one little thing to ultimately be a community. And I think people want that, and they're looking for that, but they just don't know where to find it, and it's just buried by all the other stuff that we're consuming on a daily
Oh yeah.
basis.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if you watch the news for any extended amount of time, like 50 minutes of the 1 hour is bad news, and then the 10 minutes of good news is kind of sprinkled at the end, of course. So I completely agree. I think it's how we view the world, and I think it's our perception of the world, and I think that's very clear in the news.
Totally.
It's very clear in social media. So I completely agree with you. But so just going to my next question and thinking about your volunteer experience, you've had numerous different things and numerous different levels of each organization that you've volunteered for. So I'm interested in why you volunteer. I'm interested in what your motivation is in volunteering for these different organizations that you've been a part of.
Yeah, man, that's a really good one. I don't know if I've ever fully considered that question from an external perspective, but I think it goes back to kind of what I've said a few times before in respect of wanting to just be a part of something bigger than myself. I think I had the opportunity to see firsthand that when you're a part of something larger than yourself, that your impact on the world can be so much bigger than what your limitations are as a human being. And I've been extremely blessed to live pretty privileged life, as a straight white man living in a nice suburban area growing up. And um, it's exposing myself to people and perspectives and worldviews that are different than my own so that I can learn and I can grow, but also that I can use my perspectives and my worldviews and my skills to then help make their life better. It's a give and a take,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think my answer to that question would be is I
Yeah,
just I love building things and I love watching the fruit of what I've built. Um,
totally.
Delta Sig building the chapter from the ground up, being a founding father, watching the fruit of that is just so fulfilling. The feeling of seeing your thing that you've built actually be successful is just so fulfilling. And that's obviously that's a self-centered answer, but it's the reality of the situation. Everyone has a different answer to that question. Uh,
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And I think you kind of had mentioned like having different positions at different levels, but I think like your answer hits it way more on the head in respect of like it's not about what I personally am able to do through this organization, but the impact that I'm able to make and seeing those fruits of the labor, seeing people that were a part of the organization do it better than you, or to learn a life skill and then be able to master something more than you were able to. That's what really fills my jar. That's why I love volunteering, because like there are so many more incredibly talented and skilled people than me out there in the world. And if I can help put them in a position to have success, the things that they can do, I would never even dream of,
right,
you know?
right. I think that it's also maybe another topic of it's so hard to hand it off, right? Graduation forced us to hand over our chapters, but even turnover of power or just moving into a different stage of life in different arenas. You eventually have to hand off all the work that you've done to someone else. Have you experienced that? What was your thought there?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, especially when you're involved in something like Habitat for Humanity or Delta Sigma Phi, you become extremely emotionally attached to that experience. So I think that really adds to the difficulty of handing that off and just being worried, like, this is, as a founding father, you get it, like that's your baby,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that you truly care about. And, you can only hope that the next person taking care of it does as much as they can to take care of it like you would. But I think at the same time, there's something kind of exciting about that. And I've had some successes and some major failures in transitioning people and giving the next set of leadership, the opportunity to have success. And those failures have taught me a lot about, that transition doesn't start when we're a week away from graduation or, a month out from leaving our job. That transition starts the minute we take
Oh
that
yeah.
job, right? And we're continuously preparing the next set of people to not only take over the job but to be more prepared to do it better than we were. So yeah, I think a lot of ups and downs in that learning curve for sure.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you, and so keeping with that same note of having people involved, transition of power, all those things. I'm interested in your thought on this in the sense of people are giving their time, they're volunteering for something, an organization, or at the food pantry, whatever it is. What do you think the biggest impact of volunteering truly is? What's the biggest impact of it?
Oh man. Um, wow, that is a really great question. I think it might depend on the person, but I think at least for me, volunteering has completely changed my worldview, not only of like just my local community, but the communities that I've never even seen or experienced. And also, it's taught me a lot about myself, a lot about who I am, what I care about, right? There's a lot of nonprofits to go out and volunteer for. So just the ones that I've chosen to be a part of say something about who I am. And they've ultimately continued to impact me with their values and their teachings. So, I kind of feel like a broken record, but like when you're a part of something bigger than yourself, right? it's expanding who you are, not only personally, but your own perspective.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think the answer is really multifaceted because I think that,
Yeah.
there's the clear answer of the volunteerism with Habitat for Humanity. We're putting people in houses and we're teaching people how to be
Yeah.
homeowners. I mean, that is a very clear impact. But I think that there's also another aspect of it. And again, I hope I'm not seeming too self centered, but I think that there's also room for people to benefit from volunteering. And if that's your only motivation, whatever, because there's something greater. You're giving your time and you're personally benefiting, but because you're personally benefiting, other people are benefiting. So I
Yeah.
bring I bring that
Absolutely.
up because I think that people don't take enough opportunity from volunteer positions, from working with nonprofit organizations. You go volunteer for a nonprofit organization, you go volunteer for a nonprofit organization, they're going to let you do whatever you want in terms of making their organization better. And
Yeah.
that's an opportunity for the organization to grow, but that's also an opportunity for you to grow as an individual and gain skills,
Yeah.
professional skills, as an individual. Have you seen this, or am I the only one that sees this?
100%. I think, first of all, nonprofits, people know they need volunteers, but they don't realize how much they love when someone comes into their door and says, "Hey, I'm here to help, and I'm here to help for a long period of time. I'm not here to just, do one house build or whatever. I want to actually help contribute to this organization." And I used to tell our student organization at UNC, like, this is the most fun you can ever have in an organization, because unlike a business, you can just make stuff
Yes.
up. I may have used a slightly different word than stuff, but um, you just do whatever comes to your mind, whatever great idea, whatever creative fundraiser, whatever goofy PR campaign. There's no rules really when it comes to helping other people. And there's so much freedom and creativity in that. And ultimately, it leads to, like you said, developing really important skills further down the line, whether you're going into the nonprofit sector, you're going into the business sector. It's all important, and it's really developing that people skill at the end
Oh
of the
yeah.
day.
I just kind of zooming in on my example. I was a freshman,
Yeah.
19 years old, leading an organization that had a budget of $30,000 to $50,000. 19 years old, and I
Yep.
got to go out and tell people that I've run a small organization at 19 years old with that had a budget of $50,000. If you get to be the
Yeah.
treasurer of that organization and you're going into a finance position, that that's experience, and I think that that's really
Exactly.
really important. And even going a step further, I having the opportunity to go onto the Grand Council for Delta Sigma Phi, you know,
Yeah.
overseeing a multi-million-dollar company is something that I've leaned on quite a bit because it's interesting and not a lot of people have done it. And so I think that just kind of nailing down that point, there's benefit to individuals with going out and volunteering for organizations. And the same thing is true for non-fraternity sorority organizations. I'm sure you could do something similar in your chapter of Habitat for Humanity. But going out and doing something that matters, I think, is really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, like you said, at the end of the day, it's the opportunity that when you're a part of something bigger than yourself, it's going to give you something more than you already have, right? Like the skills to be able to manage an organization, that's got tens of thousands of dollars in the account, and show that you have that responsibility and ability right out of college. That's not something that a lot of students are able to graduate with, because it's not done in the classroom. It's done outside of the
Yeah,
classroom.
a great hands-on learning experience. Absolutely. And so we're talking about like the professional benefit of individuals going out and volunteering. Is there an emotional side? So we're kind of talking about the educational side of gaining skills. Maybe is there an emotional side of going out and volunteering that people are struggling with mental health right now? Maybe there. Do you see like an impact on that with going out and volunteering your time? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, first of all, just speaking for me personally, I know the happiest times of my life are when I was doing things for other people in those organizations, whether it was Habitat for Humanity or, something as simple as talking to a fraternity brother about a leadership concept or about, just something that they're personally struggling with. Like that's what made me feel good. That's what I made me feel like I was doing something worthwhile. And I think again, it goes back to what we were talking about when people get out and volunteer and they have the opportunity to see this good that's being put into the world. It breaks that narrative of everything's bad right now, or it breaks that narrative that like everyone's out for themselves, because you get to see it firsthand. And if you're not there, how do you expect to see it? Because it's just not what we're being continuously fed right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, and that kind of sparked a question to me of, it's important to go out and do the work, but how much more important is it to share the work once it's done? What do you think?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think you and I can both kind of understand from a Greek life perspective, that's something that they're really battling right now is fighting a negative narrative, even though there's so much good that goes on in those organizations. And I think um, it's not only sharing that to break those negative narratives, but it's to create a culture that this is who our community is, whether it's the city or the university or just your local neighborhood, just small little things that you can do. You can ultimately have a massive impact on the culture that you're creating in that
Mm.
environment. And I think that's something that like people will see, once they just get a taste of it. That's why people keep coming back.
Wow. Yeah, I completely agree. I think if you go out and you do something amazing, you should absolutely share it. You shouldn't boast about it, but you should definitely be proud of the work that you've
Right.
done. Uh,
Yeah,
that's probably a time I've talked a lot about being self-centered, but I think that's not a time to be self-centered. Is to go out
right.
and share the
Yeah,
work in a way that says, I helped with this, and it's really important. You should be happy about it. You should celebrate it because people are being impacted by this, and
totally.
lives are being changed.
Yeah. And yeah, I think another big part of that too is when we're there, we feel like we understand it, right? Like I feel like I understand so many of the problems that Habitat for Humanity combats. But what I forget to realize when I share things sometimes is that a lot of people may not understand that. And by me sharing it in a certain way where it's not about me, it's about the organization, what we were doing, the issues we were fighting, or the things that we were able to achieve, it educates people on the opportunities that exist right next door to them on how they can get involved. It encourages more people to want to get out there and continue to do that. And it just continues to snowball the impact that we're able to have either through that organization, or maybe that sparks encouragement to go find a cause that's closer to your heart that ultimately you want to volunteer for. Just sharing it and educating people on things that they may not already
Yeah.
know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's such an important piece that I think is probably ignored a lot of the time. Very good topic, and so I'm going to ask a tough question. So if you're not sweating now, you will be in a moment. I'm sweating because I'm in a closet, but so there's a big debate between time and money, right? And so I'm interested. I kind of want to spark a little debate here. And is it more important to donate your time, or is it more important to donate your money? What's your thought?
Man, that is a tough question. I think I got to hit you with the political answer in respect of, I think it depends. I had mentioned at the beginning, my volunteer journey ultimately kind of was an accident, but it came from me just looking at what I had at my availability, what I was able to contribute that would ultimately help that organization. As a 20-year-old college student, I didn't have a whole lot of pocket change that I could be showing out for all the donations, but I had a massive network of people that were able to, support me in helping them. And I had a lot of time on my hands as a college student. And so obviously, as we go through different life stages, I think that changes. I think that's a large conversation in the Greek world in respect of alumni. How can alumni best be supportive when they volunteer to our chapter? And I think it depends, right? Your older alumni are people that maybe aren't as in touch with the needs of what's currently going on Greek life and chapters around college campuses. But they might be a little bit more financially secure. Whereas, guys that graduated a year or two ago may not have a whole lot of money because they're still paying off their student loans, but they might have a lot more time or experience with the current problems that they're dealing with. And I think I always try to avoid putting anyone in a box of what they should and shouldn't be doing. I think it depends on what you have to bring to the table, and you just have to be honest about that, and and do the best you can with what you have.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. I think that that's really important. I think, if you have a lot of time, you should probably give your time. If you have a lot of money, you probably should give some money, or both. But I think that you're spot on in using Greek life as an example of that. Because there's a bunch of people that can donate their money, but they can't donate their time, and vice versa. And so that's really important. I think where I would say that I would be more of a definite answer is if you are a very skilled professional. That I think if you're a very skilled professional, your time is more valuable than your money. Like if you're an accountant, these nonprofit organizations need people to do their books, and they need people to do their accounting.
100%.
Your time and your skills and your brain is more valuable than your money, actually. So I think that's where I would be more of a definitive answer. But I think that I would agree with you for the common folks, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think just to go on that a little bit, I think what's interesting is I think, when we think of like skilled professionals, like you said, accountants or doctors, when we think of like Doctors Without Borders, things like that. But I think at the end of the day, almost every single person has some form of profession that if they aligned it with the right nonprofit organization or not-for-profit organization, their expertise is needed. When I was sitting on the Habitat for Humanity board, we had a CEO of a construction company, but we also had an accountant, like you were saying. We also had a lawyer. We had people that came from these Habitat families, right? And so I think everyone has almost an equally valuable expertise or experience, but it's a matter of finding the best place to make your impact with that expertise or with that experience.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that's great. And I think for a nonprofit board, that's just a winning model, right? Delta 6 board's the same way. Every board member has a different expertise. So I think you're spot on. I'm going to ask another, I'm going to try to push you into a corner. So do you think every well-rounded person should either be giving their time or their money to something?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've taken the personal stance in my life that I've never tried to tell anyone personally what they should or shouldn't do. And I think, even a person volunteering for the right reasons in the wrong places could actually do more harm than good. I'll give an example. I was in a rhetoric of natural disasters class, where it was an English class, but it talked all about natural disasters. And one of the classes we talked about how donations or volunteering can almost create more problems than it can help. And they use the example of the Haiti earthquake. When Haiti experienced their earthquake, millions of people sent in clothing donations and other sorts of things. But the issue was that they were sending in massive fur coats and winter boots. And so they had these massive warehouses of all of these donations that were given out in goodwill, but it was actually creating more work and taking longer to give out the donations because people weren't educating themselves before they go and volunteer, before they donated, to see what is it that we actually should be sending. And if you kind of clog the system, it can almost create more work to kind of clean up rather than progress moving forward. So I think if a person, finds a cause that they care about, that they know that they can contribute to in a positive manner, and maybe has done a little bit of research beforehand, like, I would encourage every person to go, but I wouldn't say everyone should be doing something all of the time if it meant just getting involved for the sake of getting involved, if that
Wow.
makes
Wow.
sense.
You're just so elegant in your response there. I think that you're spot on, and you changed my mind right here on the show. So, but
Perfect.
I think that brings up another point of being intentional in your giving, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's clothing, whatever it is, being intentional and knowing what you're doing before you do it. That's such a great example of sending winter clothing to Haiti. That seems problematic. And yeah, I think that it raises more of an issue than it does benefits the people that are in need. Wow. Okay. Okay. I buy that. I buy that. Let's see. I want to know what your next move is in the realm of volunteering. Where are you going next? Where are you currently at? I don't know what you're doing volunteer wise. And who are you currently wanting to give your time to?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think right now, my major time is being spent as a chapter operations and risk advisor for my current, or for my past chapter, Zeta Kappa, at the University of Northern Colorado, and trying to provide some leadership education and opportunities there. I think right now, the current state of the world in our country has really sparked a desire for me to get more involved in social causes, kind of just around, whether it's my specific community or, throughout the country. But I think there's a lot of healing that needs to happen, and I just want to be a part of a productive process. And I'm excited to kind of see where that goes. But the only other place that I kind of really want to go is, I've always been a lover of baseball. I umpired Little League baseball for 12 years. I've volunteered as a coach a few times, but now that I'm at a more stable point in my life, I'd love to start coaching some Little League teams and just kind of volunteering in a more fun and competitive
Yeah,
environment.
yeah. I love your multiple answers. Bring up another interesting topic, which is volunteering looks different in everybody's stage of life and in everybody's specific place. And so you go from baseball to social activism to other things. I think that's great. Any other things that you think are volunteering that people may not see as volunteering?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been one to be more abstract than not, I think. And in my mind, just being a part of anything bigger than yourself. It can be, your apartment community, or it can be, a group of friends. But if you are doing something that can positively impact your community, it doesn't have to be anything as formal as going to Habitat for Humanity and building a home. It can be, you and a buddy going on the side of the road and just picking up a few cans, going to the beach and picking up loose cigarettes. Seeing someone that needs help carrying some groceries crossing the street. I think we put a really formal lens on volunteerism, and anytime we're giving back to our community and using our abilities to make the world a better place, I would consider that volunteerism. And those are the moments I most look forward to, because they're spontaneous, and you just never know what's going to happen with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think volunteerism looks different across the world, across the state, even across your community. Volunteerism looks different. And so I completely agree. I think that's amazing. What else am I missing here in the world of volunteerism? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about in terms of volunteerism specifically? Any calls to action?
Yeah, I think, like I said, one of the biggest things stopping people from getting involved is the fact that they don't know where to
Mm.
start. And it's not the fact that they don't want to help, it's just they don't know where to go. Um, and you can look at it as a positive thing or a negative thing, but all of us have been deeply impacted by something in our life, whether it's affordable housing or cancer or, veterans and support, mental health, anything. And I think those are the easiest things to volunteer for, are the things that we've been personally impacted by, because they mean something to us already. And that can kind of spark that first initial getting there. And once you're there, you can be surrounded by people that have all been relatively impacted by that thing. And the power that can come from that, the healing that can come from that, and the growing that can come from that is something that you can't get in a formal business setting. You can't get it, sitting at home or going out to the bar. It's a very special thing. And I think you just have to find something that means something to you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's so good. It's so good. Because I do think people want to volunteer. I do think people want to have an impact. They just don't know how to do it. And I think that it goes from just simple research in terms of you're passionate about mental health. What's going on in the world? Can I volunteer and help people in the mental health space? And that's fill in the blank, right? It doesn't have to be mental health. There's so many causes out there. So, oh man, so good. So good. So if people want to go find you, Chris, where should they go find you? Should they go to Instagram, LinkedIn? Where should people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can find me at Chris Blacker on Instagram, or you can look me up under Christopher Blacker on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect and just share across to anyone that's looking to volunteer or needs some advice on where to start. More than happy to kind of give my perspective and my experience and help you start your own.
Oh my gosh, so good. You're so just giving, and that's so contagious. I want to go change the world now because you're changing the world out in Colorado. Oh my gosh. All right. So go follow Chris on those platforms. Also go follow the podcast at How to Adult TW on Facebook and Instagram. If you're interested in sponsoring an episode, reach out. I'd love to partner with a business that supports my podcast. And with all that being said, y'all, we will continue to learn how to adult together.